And thank you for joining us today in Conversation 2, the Jalan Klang Lama, Wakabacho Yamate, Changing Notion of Sight with Time. And this conversation is part of Sight See, Sight Now segment of the Situ and exhibition. And I would like to share a bit about the exhibition. Let me share screen. Okay. So the Situ and exhibition is about understanding site-specific works, about finding meanings of working in place through divergent perspective of art practitioner, where we will look into different contexts which artists deal with in their work. So the exhibition is currently ongoing online and on site at Gongsi Kiao, and we are also open for virtual tour. You can message us if you want to get to know more about that. And for today, our flow is to, I'll introduce a bit about DC2 and to conclude a bit about what has happened in Site C so far. And then Salbin, our moderator, will introduce our speakers and followed by each of our speakers' presentation. And then lastly, it would be discussion and Q&A. So there are three segments in DC2 and exhibitions. First one, Site A, Gudang Yee Seng 2, where the visual artist Novia Shin and the designer Lee Sun-yong are asked to make a new work based on the site context of a warehouse area called Gudang Yee Seng 2, where Gongsi Kiao is located. And then there is Site B, Meanwhile Elsewhere, is an effort to look beyond our own neighborhood, as in look beyond Gongsi Kiao, to look at where, what, and how other artists are doing in their site. For in this exhibition, we are featuring Ridwan Saiti, writer-director, and dance artist Lee Sing, and they reflect on their relationship with the sites they are working on. And then for Site C, Site Now, it's a series of conversation and fieldwork to give a first-hand experience of working on site, and then zoom out further to look at our environment, practices in Asia City, which is what is we are joining in today. And then we'll come back to reflect on Site A processes. So I would like to recap briefly about Site C, Site Now. So we had our fieldwork before the exhibition started, and then fieldwork air is with Rensing, and we look at our walkable space, and participants did a 10 days walking ritual on their own around their neighborhood using the prompts given by Rensing, and the exchange is done in private individual email. So we have just wrapped up the session last Thursday with a collective exchange, also meaningful exchange about each of their experiences. And then for fieldwork B, we look at a virtual site as performing space as a stage where physical performance space are closed at this time. The participants are using desktop, which is also an intimate extension of themselves, to explore their memories towards their childhood site, as well as to express their frustration in current time. And then last week, we had conversation one, which focused on nature side, the forest and the sea in Malaysia. The important points that were mentioned in the conversations are on empowering community to tell their own story and the power of visual storytelling and to learn from nature and their act of resilient empathy and symbiotic relationship of human and the environment, and also humanizing science in through collaborations of art and science. So today in conversation 2, we will look at various urban sites in different cities of Asia. And I would like to introduce our moderator for this session, Salbin. So Salbin teaches at the Faculty of Creative Multimedia University, Malaysia, and he is a member of Rumah Panas and an artist initiative based in Kuala Lumpur. And his practice encompasses conceptual work, installation, mapping, and curatorial project. It's Rumah Air Panas. So other collaboration includes Wasteland Twinning Network in Berlin 2011, Operasi Cassava in the Media Art Kitchen exhibition in KL 2013, and Yamaguchi Center of Arts and Media YCAM in 2014. And recent curatorial project includes Escape from the Sea, organized by the Chun Foundation KL in 2017. So shall we pass the session to Salbin? Thank you.
right, thank you very much, Patient. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second conversation of Site C for DC2. Glad to be here with everyone to talk about something that deal with art activities or project that is situated within spaces and places, and what is the notion of time or how the duration and frequency of engagement means something very important for our speakers. So a place changes depending on what we understand and feel and engage, with the moment, and of course over time when relationships are built and art projects are done, and we will still continue to interact with some of these places that we are based in. So our conversation will look at different spaces and of course the organization or collective with specific initiative on site from based in 3 different neighborhoods and cities in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Yokohama, Japan, and in Hong Kong. Okay, that contemplates, hopefully we talk about the past, things they have done, and maybe what are the kind of different ideas for future experiences. Okay, what do they do, right? Basically, they were going to share with us what do they do, how do they work as a group, or together and with others, and in that sense, what kind of things do they do, all right? And how do they engage across the scale of time and frequency? So I'd like to introduce our 3 panelists for today. Firstly is Jun Yee. Okay, Jun Yee is trained as an architect and has always been fascinated by how people use space and how space affects people. She participates in various urban intervention projects and occasionally conducts research projects in Kuala Lumpur. And Jun Yee has also worked with other curators in setting up museums and galleries. So she joined Kongsi KL in 2019 and is the assistant producer for the multidisciplinary collaborative platform Seni Tiga, which she will be speaking about. Our second speaker is Lee Fung from Hong Kong. So Fung is an artist and curator based in Hong Kong. His artistic interest is the interconnection between the sense of community and activism. His practices cover different media and disciplines, ranging from art action, video, photography, publication, workshop writing, curating, etc. So he's a co-founder of Wufatan, which ran from 2009 to 15, a community art space based in Yamate in Hong Kong, which is a grassroots neighborhood, right? And so Fung will be presenting his reflection on Wufatan later. And our last but not least, our third speaker is Zulu Kageyama from Yokohama, Japan. And the project she's associated with is Art Lab OVA, which is an art project by Zulu Kageyama and Kuri Suzuki. They have organized non-profit corporation as their art project since 1996, and in 2010 opened the Yokohama Paradise Hall next to a movie theater in Wakabacho, Yokohama, which is the old downtown area just between a former biggest red light districts, and various people of various nationality lives around there. So various projects have been initiated based on this relationship between the people around Art Lab OVA. So the issue of survival and the issue of expressions are considered side by side, and the question of what art can do in the context of a complex social reality is explored and then put into practice in everyday life. And this is what Zulu-san will be sharing with us. She will be assisted by our very personable interpreter, Akiko Kume-san, who will be interpreting for Zulu-san. So without further ado, I would like to invite Jun Yee to give her presentation today. Jun Yee, okay. All yours.
Thank you, Sabine. I'll first share my screen. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Jun Yee and I'm the assistant producer for Seni Tiga, a multidisciplinary collaborative performance series that was created in 2019. So Paysian is also one of the assistant producer for this project, and I thought when she invited me to talk about this for the Situ exhibition, I got like, oh, I'm so confused. What am I supposed to talk about this? Because both of us are not trained, do not have any formal training in the performing arts scene. And we're supposed to talk about performing arts with the underlying theme of changing notion of sight with time. So I thought about starting the presentation with an introduction of our site. This is a bird eye view of Kongsi KL. You see the center, the block of warehouse in the middle of the picture. We are occupying half of the space, the one on the right. You can see our entrance over there. That is Kongsi KL. It's a 10,000 square feet warehouse that used to be a Volvo car factory in, I think, 50 years ago. It was a car factory for a few decades before it became a stainless steel factory. So it is situated in between Port Klang and Kuala Lumpur city centre, connected by Old Klang Road, Jalan Klang Lama, which is the road that cuts diagonally on top of the picture. So to the right is where it leads to Kuala Lumpur city centre, and to the left is where it will bring you to Port Klang. So it was the first major road in Kuala Lumpur, linking these two important places with a lot of industrial areas, commercial buildings, as well as residential areas. So as time goes by, a lot of this industrial area moves slowly outside of KL. So a lot of these factories and big scale plants are being taken down, slowly replaced by residential projects, as well as commercial buildings, as well as office buildings. So this is the context of Kongsi KL. And in 2017, we actually had a group of founders who went to talk to the owner of the site, owner of Kongsi KL, which is situated in this industrial area called Gudang Yee Seng. The developer, Exim, was very generous to give us the space rent-free to run arts and cultural events. So we have been doing it since 2017, and our founders had the idea of naming the place as Kongsi KL because Kongsi means sharing in Bahasa Malaysia, our local language, as well as an assembly or company in Chinese, Cantonese, as well as Hokkien language. So because of the nature of the site, how it came about and all that, they had the idea of making this into an accessible platform for different people to come and do different things and try different things, artists and non-artists alike. So this was how we started. And the first manager of Kongsi KL, her name is Doris. She started an initiative called Kongsi Collab, where she would invite people to join in this, to be on board the Kongsi KL family, to build this space together, because Kongsi Collab also means it's sort of like Kongsi Galab, which means like a gang in our local language. So it's kind of like a community building initiative, so that different people from different disciplines and upbringing would come together to build this space together. Because what we have is only this vast empty space in a warehouse, and all these intangible attributes needs to be, a lot of it's built together by a lot of people with a lot of time and effort. So she recognized the importance of bringing different people on board to build this, and also knowing that there's a limit to what we can imagine. So the more people being on board, the more possibilities that can be imagined out of this. So, which is also where Seni Tiga was born, because this was taken in, I think, 2018, late 2018, where Justin, who is an architect and also part of the Kongsi Collab initiative, came to Kongsi KL to test his OHP, which he just got a hold of. So he was looking for a corner in Kongsi KL to test his OHP because the space is tall and wide. So he started off with something like this and slowly moved towards projection painting. So during his first few visits, sometime there will be people in the warehouse, and one day it happened, it just so happened that there's this sound artist, his name is Ken Lee, was there, as well as a few dance artists, Kim, as well as Mr. Chu, they were also there. So there was this jamming session that happened inside the warehouse. And so Justin will be doing this projection painting, Ken will be making some music, and then the dancer will be joining in occasionally to create sort of like a piece. And Kim actually thought that this is something worth sharing with a wider audience. So she went back and think about what just happened that day and deconstructed performance into three fundamental elements, which is movement, something to look at during a performance, visual, something to, you know, put spotlight on different things that you want to show or to present an idea, as well as the element of sound, where it will be tying all the elements together. And then after that, she sort of get the idea of Seni Tiga from this, knowing that these are the core members for a performance to happen. So she got both me and Paysian on board. Kim is the one in the middle. She's the producer of Seni Tiga, and both me and Paysian are the assistant producers for the project. So both of us are not trained, do not have any formal training in performing arts. We're both trained as architects. We didn't really know what was performing arts all about, but being trained as architects, we are always fascinated with the way people use spaces. So we also were very interested in what are the possibilities that other people see in this space, because all of the time when people get to our space, they will go like, wow, I would do this and that in this corner, I would do that. They have a lot of crazy ideas, but we know that it was very challenging for people to realize all these ideas because of the vast space itself as well. So we understood the importance of building a portal or a platform that acts as a reason for people to, you know, be invited into the space to create something together. So we had one show each month in 2019. We started in February as a volunteer project because we were not supported by any organization. So we had to do this based on passion. And we were actually quite surprised that people are equally passionate as us. But having no money means that the artists have to make use of what they can find in the space. So oftentimes they would play around with all the furniture as well as, you know, all those weird corners in the warehouse. So it was also quite challenging in terms of technicalities, where, you know, there is no lighting designer in the house and there is no proper equipment to put on a proper show. So the artists often have to come up with interesting, or maybe they had to really think out of the box to think of ways to achieve whatever result that they have in mind. It was also very interesting for us to look at how people interpret the space. There are actually a lot of projection artists on board in 2019 because it was relatively easy for a projection artist to project something. It's relatively cheap compared to, you know, building a set and all that. So there are a lot of projection artists, but we were actually quite surprised to see how people play with light and space, even though they're working on the same medium. And sometimes they actually have, because the space is actually a flat area, so there's no designated seating area, there's no designated stage area. So artists would just find corners inside the warehouse to craft this little bubble around them so that they could present the stories or the ideas well. So using Renzin's word, she would call this process making visible. So I feel like in 2019, we're actually opening our doors to invite people in to make our warehouse visible to the general public. So that was what happened. And then slowly, as time goes by, people spend more time in the warehouse. They start to get a feel of the limitation of the space. Justin would use the word abuse. He would feel that the venue can take a lot of abuse, where we would introduce natural elements like fire, like water, as well as artificial elements like coffee powder. We're using it to the benefit of height, sometimes the width of the space. So also, as time goes by, we start to build this community where different people were interested to try their ideas. We also built a very young, not just artists, as well as audience. They would, for this show in particular, there are half of the artists, maybe 5 or 6 of them are still in university, and they would bring their ideas into this place and, you know, collaborate with other people to see what could come out of it. So it was actually an interesting journey for us, as well as building a community with international artists. Occasionally, we get artists from other countries to join the Seni Tiga program, as well as the volunteer, the squad that built the program together with us. And it's also a very humbling experience to see all these volunteers as well as artists cleaning the space with us most of the time. And you know, they're not like, oh, I'm an artist, I want to do this, you're supposed to take care of me. They usually don't do that. When they come into Kongsi KL, they know that they have to be very hands-on, and you know, they really get to doing everything themselves. So we also did statistics at the end of 2019 and discovered that most of our artists are actually quite young. We are also very happy to be able to create a platform that makes arts accessible, not just because we were able to build audience from, you know, people who are not used to going to theater, people who are not used to watch performance would come to some of the shows because it's, I don't know, maybe it's new to them. Some of the artists as well have not done any performance in their entire life before joining Seni Tiga as well. So they would be paired with experienced performers and do a project together. And we were able to build the audience slowly. And then that also means better business for us because, as you know, Kongsi KL is a space where we rent our space out for people to do shootings, sometimes workshops. When Seni Tiga started, people actually got to know us better. So actually more people join our dance classes, more people join our workshops, and more people actually talk to us to rent our space out for shoots. We were also able to bring something that we created in the warehouse, outside of the warehouse, outside of Old Klang Road. The picture on the left was taken during Georgetown Festival 2019, where the first show of Seni Tiga were selected as one of the performance in the opening night, as well as Urbanscapes 2019. Later that year, we also brought the performances created inside the warehouse to downtown KL. So all these 3 performances happened outdoor. The artists were able to work with the limitations now outside to bring the same idea or the same concept and translate it into something else. So I think it was an important moment for us to understand that it's not just about how far we can go. This is taken during the development phase for one of the Seni Tiga performances. It's called Foundry, in late 2019, where the artists would take walks around the neighborhood. Kongsi KL is somewhere over here. So they would take walks around the neighborhood to look for stories and look for texture, look for inspirations for their project. And that actually, I suspected this is what inspired us also to really look at where we are at, the context of of everything, to realize that it's not just about how far you can go, how many shows you can do, but the amount of meaningful relationship that you're able to develop when you're at a place. So I would like to end this presentation with these 2 pictures. This is taken in late 2019 or maybe early 2020. I don't really remember. So Kongsi KL is a very pretty space according to a lot of artists. They want to do a lot of things in this space. But what actually touch our heart is actually when things start to happen, when people really come to this place to make something. I think the intangible attributes of a space is the most important thing to build for a venue. Thank you. Yep, that's it from me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Jun Yee. That was very interesting in a sense to see that how the pace of modernization, in a sense, provide a kind of different characteristic, the change of characteristic of this specific space, that it moved from warehouse and still a mixed warehouse area, commercial area, but yet making it available for, in a sense, a kind of a platform for communities of artists to come in to experiment, in a sense, very medium specific. But I think I like the idea that you pointed out the kind of intangible attribute slowly builds up at the end, or in recent times where the artists are now exploring the site and the neighborhood in a sense. And it would be interesting to think about or to talk about this later for you to reflect with us, like what are the potential, what do they talk about that you haven't done yet, but you think would be a very engaging aspect, not just for the artists and audience who come, but people who live there. I think that would be something interesting to think about. So now I would like to invite Chun Fung from Hong Kong to speak about Woofer 10. Chun Fung, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Xiaobin, and thank you, Asian, for inviting me to participate in this talk. Okay, so let me share my phone. Okay, to full screen. Okay, so let me start my sharing. I like the title, Changing Notion of Sight with Time. Firstly, I introduce myself. My name is Li Fung, an artist and curator based in Hong Kong. Maybe today we'll mainly talk about the project, an aspect, community aspect. I participate in 2009 to 2015. Oh, sorry, I spelled wrong. So, one more T. Okay, just delete this T. Okay, anyway, yeah, but I've been share a case of Woofer 10 actually quite many times in different places as as well. But recent years I am not. I don't usually share the case of Woofer 10 because one of the reasons is because the context, social context, I think in Hong Kong is kind of really changing, and like the Woofer 10 is closed. The space actually closed 5-6 years ago. So like sometimes I'm also curious, is this still valid? But like when patient invites me and she mentioned about the projects this time you guys did, and like the question about like when artists engage in the neighborhood, like what kind of relationship we could build. So maybe historically, Woofer 10 could be a reference. Yeah, but like when I introduced Woofer 10, I think there are some special context, uniqueness of Hong Kong society. If you don't know about that, maybe it's difficult to understand totally. But like I will try to explain this step by step. We can follow up with in the Q&A session. But like in this photo actually is where Woofer 10 is located, is in the corner of of a street we call Shanghai Street. It's kind of like a boundary between city, because over the right hand side is already the residential areas. So mainly residential building, and people live there. But like and the left hand side is already a Mongkok area, Wongkok, and like famous for like shopping, you know, a lot of tourists. So this Shanghai Street is kind of in between the boundary with between the city and living neighborhood, and we are in the corner of this street. This is the front view of Wolverton. This is a space actually owned by the Arts Council, and like they got this space also from the government, and they want to use this space for running community art project. So artists actually can apply this space for like 1 year, 2 years. You hand in a proposal and you can run this space. And like, but this space used to be like the artists used to take this space like a white tube gallery, you know, just like gallery setting, and like white color wall, and hanging picture, painting or photography, and like showing art in this way. But like we want to turn it into like living space, like a community center that can involve the participation from the neighborhood. And our neighborhood actually is also very diverse. This photo we take it at night, and you see some men here. Actually, sometimes also we have like a sex worker standing outside. And like we in this neighborhood, also an old neighborhood in Hong Kong, an aging neighborhood. So a lot of at daytime, a lot of old people, elderly people, and a lot of homeless people also, and also hawker, and like worker, a lot of worker. Okay, so and also a lot of also this neighborhood. A lot of marginal ethnic minority group, like a new immigrant from China or from South Asia, also live in this neighborhood. So this neighborhood is a kind of mix, and like a working class, mainly working class. So there's some special meaning when we do art here, because our main audience is not the art audience, art audience in the middle class audience in Central. You know, they are already educated in understanding art, but really like grassroots neighborhood. Yeah, so neighborhood. So, but same in many places in Hong Kong, old neighborhood like this are facing a kind of pressure of urban regeneration, like because real estate is a big economy in Hong Kong. You know, housing is very expensive, so like it's a big profit if this kind of neighborhood we build. So. But recently, already many big redevelopment projects around this neighborhood. So, but the Yalmate is a big area, so it's a kind of not facing direct urban redevelopment crisis, but a slow process of gentrification. And like I also explained the context, like in this in urban center in Hong Kong, we face a high mobility. Like in a figure, in average, people live in these areas 4 years. So like people are kind of changing their house. Maybe sometimes they move out from this neighborhood, but like some of them maybe just 1 year they already changed their house. Some live long. So it's difficult to find a neighborhood that people that live in this area for very long time. You know, there's a very high mobility. Also, the living density is very high in Hong Kong. There's some figure in some extreme cases we call subdivided house. In government figure is more than 200,000 people living in that kind of subdivided house, and the average living space is just 47.8 square feet. Yeah, maybe your toilet already bigger than living space. And near Yau Ma Tei, also a big development project called West Kowloon Cultural District. Let me see. Yeah, you can see this picture. This area is the West Kowloon Cultural District. So there's a luxury house and Leo Contemporary Art Museum, theater, all the cultural facility, and a very beautiful park. People come here picnic, and I think around here is a river Thames. The Yau Ma Tei area is like this big, and the most extreme case, the lower class people live in this kind of subdivided house. So you see a big contradiction we face in Yau Ma Tei actually, and with the influence of urban movement in Hong Kong. So we bring in the notion of democracy, urban planning. So some artists also are affected by it and want to involve the process of participation of people in making art. So that is the main objective when we run Woofer 10. We want to build up not just a showcase of art, but an experimental platform established from an eco-living relationship. Based on this, we make art. So I just want to share two stories. So the first story is Mrs. Grant. Mrs. Grant, we know them because we have this project. This project is our first project. We send 30 artists to the neighborhood and interview and collect different stories. And after that, they make a trophy. They make a trophy and give it back to the neighborhood. So each trophy represent the story of that shop or of that neighborhood, this egg tart, maybe the most delicious egg tart in Shanghai Street, something like this. This is a trophy for mirror shop, make a photo frame, a mirror, because a father with his sons always stay in the shop. It's like a warm family. So this trophy is like a warm family cry, something like this. But when the children grow up, they enter the kindergarten, and the school bus just stop in front of Woofer 10. So they come every afternoon. They come to our space, and the mother, Mrs. Guan, one day even asked me to help her to